I stood at the edge of the driveway, the sun beating down on the blacktop as their brand new SUV backed out without slowing. My hand still rested on the walker, heart pounding, not from exertion, but from the sting of my daughter's words. "You can't ride with us, Mom. The leather seats are new, and you kind of smell like old people." My son-in-law didn't even look at me. They pulled away, laughing with the windows rolled up. The same hands I once used to buckle her into car seats. Now too unwelcome to touch hers, I watched them vanish down the street, the exhaust thick in the air. That was the moment I knew my legacy wouldn't follow them. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Connie Elkins stood at her kitchen window, the glass faintly cool under her fingertips as she watched the street outside. The mountains in the distance were clear after last night's rain, sharp as a cutout against the September sky. She had rehearsed the call in her head for hours. Steady voice, polite request, nothing that could be mistaken for guilt or neediness. At 77, she hated asking for favors, but her left foot had been aching badly, and the podiatrist's office wasn't on a bus line she normally used. She picked up the phone and dialed her daughter. Heather answered on speaker, her voice brimming with performative cheer. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Connie tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear. "I was hoping you might give me a ride to my appointment this afternoon. It's just over on Prospect. Shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. Silence stretched for a beat. Then Heather's tone shifted, thin and brittle. "Oh, Mom, we just picked up the new car this morning. I don't think we're ready for, wear and tear yet." Connie blinked at the wording. "It's a 15-minute drive, Heather." "Hardly wear and tear." There was a low chuckle from the background. "Evan." He leaned toward the phone so his words would land just right. "Not with that smell in the car, Connie." The words landed with surgical precision. Connie froze, her hand tightening on the counter's edge until her knuckles paled. She glanced around her spotless kitchen, lemon oil still lingering from the wood polish, yesterday's laundry folded and stacked, the faint lavender scent from the sachet she kept in the pantry. She smelled nothing but order and familiarity. Her voice came out steady, though her chest ached. "I see. Well, thank you anyway." Heather's quick, brittle laugh fluttered through the speaker. "Maybe next time, Mom." Once we get used to the car, then the line clicked dead, leaving silence. Connie stood there a long moment, the dial tone humming in her ear. She set the phone down gently, her motions measured, as though any sudden movement might shatter her entirely. The bus stop was 4 blocks away. She slipped on her cardigan, picked up her handbag, and locked the door behind her. Outside, the early afternoon sun felt too bright, each passing car too loud. She walked slowly, careful on the uneven sidewalk, her breath tight in her throat. By the time she lowered herself onto the cracked plastic bench at the stop, her legs trembled. The bus hissed to a halt minutes later, doors opening with the sharp scent of diesel. She climbed aboard, the driver giving her a quick nod. The seats smelled faintly of rubber and disinfectant. Connie chose one near the window and folded her hands in her lap, staring out at the blur of houses and grocery store parking lots. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Chloe. That was cruel. "I'm sorry," Connie's eyes prickled. She typed nothing back, just slid the phone into her bag and stared out at the ridges of the mountains, blue-gray against the sky. She would not let them see her bend. The bus lurched, carrying her toward the clinic. The motion jostled her into silence, her reflection faint in the glass. Neat hair, pressed blouse, calm face, nothing out of place. She sat tall, though her insides roiled. An hour later, when the bus groaned back into her neighborhood, Connie stepped carefully down the stairs. Her legs wobbled beneath her as she crossed the street. She moved slower than she liked, her heart racing from the exertion. From across the hedge, Beverly Crane's voice called out. "Connie?" Connie looked up. Beverly, in her faded denim jacket, stood with her little terrier tugging at the leash. Her sharp eyes scanned Connie's pale face, the tight grip she had on her purse strap. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Beverly stepped closer, her voice lowering, steady and certain. "We need to talk." Beverly slipped an arm under Connie's elbow as they crossed the front walk. Connie resisted the help at first, but her knees buckled slightly on the last step, and she allowed herself to lean just enough. Beverly's terrier yipped, circling their ankles, the leash clicking against Beverly's wedding ring from decades ago. Inside, Connie's house carried the warmth of order: polished wood, faint lavender sachets, fresh air drifting in from the cracked kitchen window. Beverly glanced around and shook her head. "Smelled bad," she muttered, repeating the phrase as though trying it on for size. Then her eyes narrowed. "Connie, you keep this place cleaner than I keep my own. Don't you let that sit." Connie lowered herself into the armchair by the window, her breath shallow. She smoothed her cardigan, but her hands trembled. He said it like he was stating a fact, not even a joke. Just truth, in his voice. Beverly perched on the ottoman opposite her. "And Heather let him." That's the part that burns. Connie's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she reached for the side table drawer and pulled out her leather-bound journal. The pen glided across the page with steady determination. She wrote the phrase exactly as Evan had spoken it. Not with that smell in the car. She underlined it once, then again. Her hand pressed so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. Beverly watched in silence, her sharp gaze softer now. "Good. You put it down. That way it's not just floating in your head, poisoning you. It's theirs now, on paper." The clock ticked in the background, each second tapping against Connie's nerves. She closed the journal with a quiet thud and set it aside. The front door rattled. For a moment, Connie stiffened, her body bracing as though Heather herself might storm in. But instead, Chloe appeared in the doorway, her backpack slung low, a bakery box balanced in her arms. She set it on the counter and pushed a strand of dark hair from her face. "I brought muffins," Chloe said softly, her voice tight. Her eyes were rimmed red, lashes clumped as though she had wiped them too often. Connie rose slowly and crossed the room. She pulled Chloe into her arms, holding her firmly until the girl's stiff shoulders loosened. Connie whispered near her ear, "It wasn't your fault." Chloe clung for a moment, then nodded, blinking fast. "I don't know why they—" She cut herself off, biting her lip. "Because they could," Connie said simply. Her words were even, but the weight behind them sank deep into Chloe's chest. Beverly cleared her throat gently, sensing the unspoken lines between mother, daughter, and granddaughter. "I'll leave you two," she said, clipping the terrier's leash back on. Before stepping out, she pointed a finger toward Connie's journal. "Don't erase that. Don't ever erase it." The door closed behind her, leaving Connie and Chloe in a quiet that smelled of lemon oil and warm blueberries from the open muffin box. They sat together at the table, breaking the muffins apart without appetite, each bite too dry in their throats. Later, when Chloe left for home, Connie walked slowly down the hallway toward her bedroom. Her house seemed to hum around her, the refrigerator's low buzz, the faint creak of the floorboards underfoot. She opened the closet door and crouched carefully, pulling out the metal file cabinet tucked beneath coats and scarves. Her fingers trailed across the cool handle before she tugged the drawer open. Inside were folders in neat rows, labeled in her meticulous handwriting: mortgage, insurance, medical, will. She slid the last one free. At the top of the first page, in black type, her own words stared back at her from years earlier. Heather Lott, primary beneficiary. Connie sat cross-legged on the carpet, the file folder open in her lap like a relic from another life. The air in the bedroom was cool, tinged with the faint cedar scent of mothballs. The documents inside bore her neat tabs and labels, evidence of the librarian's precision that had never left her. She adjusted her glasses and read through the will line by line. 60% to Heather Lott, 40% to Chloe Lott. The words seemed clinical, detached, but they carried weight, a kind of endorsement she no longer recognized as her own. Heather's name appeared first, bold and unchallenged, the clear beneficiary of decades of Connie's savings, her home, the equity she had guarded with discipline. Chloe's share came next, smaller, almost as if Connie had once believed the girl's future could be safely entrusted to her parents' care. Her chest tightened as she read. Heather and Evan's laughter still echoed in her ears, that smug dismissal wrapped around her dignity, not with that smell in the car. She ran her finger along Heather's name on the page, pressing down until the ink blurred faintly under her skin. Connie pulled a yellow legal pad from the drawer of her nightstand. She wrote at the top, in block letters, revision notes. Each stroke of the pen steadied her. Bullet by bullet, she began sketching what would become her quiet counterattack. Reconsider percentages. Protect Chloe. Remove Heather entirely. Legal counsel required. Her mind sharpened as she wrote, each note landing like a stone in a foundation. They had treated her as a nuisance, an inconvenience, something to brush aside. But on paper, she still held power. She would wield it carefully. The following afternoon, Beverly came by with her terrier again. She spotted the folder on the table and raised an eyebrow. "You're digging in?" Connie nodded, sliding her glasses higher on her nose. "I'm not leaving my future for them to chew up." Beverly leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Then you'll want John Westbrook. Man's a shark with paperwork. Built my niece's trust so tight her ex-husband couldn't even sniff at it. Works out of that little office near the juice bar." Of all places, Connie's pen hovered over her pad. "Westbrook," she murmured, writing it down. That evening, after her appointment at the podiatrist's, she sat with her phone on the table. Heather's text arrived like clockwork. "Hope your appointment went okay. No mention of the ride, no apology. Just a hollow politeness, as though nothing had been said, as though humiliation could be smoothed over by ignoring it." Connie typed back only 2 words, "Thank you." Then she set the phone face down and opened her journal again, underlining the day's entry twice. Later that night, the house was still, the clock ticking past 9. Connie dialed the number Beverly had given her. A cheerful receptionist answered. "Westbrook Legal Group, this is Dana." Connie explained briefly, her voice calm but firm. "I need to review my estate documents. And I need protection." Donna took her information with brisk efficiency. "We'll reach out with availability, Mrs. Elkins." When Connie ended the call, she exhaled slowly, a steadying breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She gathered the folder, slid it back into the cabinet, and clicked the drawer shut with quiet finality. The house settled around her as she prepared for bed, the silence almost companionable now. She brushed her hair, folded her cardigan neatly over the chair, and slid beneath the quilt she had stitched herself years ago. The night air carried the faint sound of sprinklers from a neighbor's lawn, a soft hiss like static. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A voicemail notification flashed. Connie reached for it, her pulse quickening. She pressed play, expecting perhaps another hollow message from Heather. Instead, it was Dana's voice, brisk and almost triumphant. "Mrs. Elkins, we have an opening. Tomorrow morning, if you can make it." Connie pushed open the glass door of Westbrook Legal the next morning, the small brass bell chiming faintly overhead. The office sat wedged between a yoga studio and a juice bar that smelled of wheatgrass and citrus. From the outside, it looked unimposing, just another storefront in a strip plaza. But inside, the air felt different. Quiet, intentional, a place where things were set down in ink and could never be unwritten. The waiting area smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. Shelves lined the walls, filled not with decorations, but with tidy binders labeled in precise lettering. The organization reminded Connie of her decades at the library, where order was a language all its own. She exhaled as though she had stepped into familiar terrain. Dana, the receptionist she'd spoken to, appeared from behind the desk, her smile brisk but not unkind. "Mrs. Elkins? Mr. Westbrook will see you now." John Westbrook's office door was half open. Connie walked in, clutching her folder and yellow pad, the weight of both grounding her. John rose from his chair, tall, trim, gray at the temples. His suit was simple, his tie knotted neatly but without flair. His handshake was firm, his voice even. "Mrs. Elkins," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "Let's talk about what you need." Connie sat, her knees stiff, and placed the folder on the desk between them. "I have a will, but I need more than that now." He opened the folder, scanning the old will quickly. His brows lifted slightly as he flipped through her notes. "You want a trust. Something airtight. Something they can't touch." Connie's chin dipped once in confirmation. "Exactly." John leaned back, tapping a pen lightly against the folder. "There are two main types. Revocable, you keep control, but they can be contested down the line. Irrevocable, you give up certain flexibilities, but no one, and I mean no one, can pry into it. You mentioned in your notes a phased lock-in. That's a smart middle ground. We can start revocable, then flip the switch to lock it permanently when you decide." Connie listened carefully, her eyes steady. "I want it phased. But I want clarity. My granddaughter Chloe will inherit everything at 25. Until then, I want controls in place to make sure she's safe." John nodded, jotting notes on his legal pad. "And your daughter? Your son-in-law?" Connie's voice didn't waver. "Excluded. Explicitly." The words seemed to hang in the air, final and sharp. John only nodded again, unfazed. "Then that's how we'll draft it. The clearer the exclusion, the harder it is for them to argue. I'll also recommend a no contest clause. If they try to challenge the trust, they lose any chance at even a token share." Connie let a slow breath out. For the first time in days, she felt the outline of control returning to her. She shifted in her chair. "There's one more thing. I want to write a letter. For them, not legal language." "My own words." John set his pen down. "A personal statement to accompany the trust?" "Yes," Connie said, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "They dismissed me with words. I want mine to outlast theirs." For a moment, John studied her face, the quiet determination etched into the fine lines around her eyes. "Then we'll make sure it's included. Your letter will go in the trust packet, sealed, filed, and irremovable." Connie gave a small nod, her lips pressing together, holding back the rush of something too complex to name. Relief, anger, vindication, all folded together. Their meeting stretched on. They discussed titling the house into the trust, transferring her retirement accounts, the small certificates of deposit she still held from her husband's working years. John explained each step without condescension, like a teacher who knew she could keep up. Connie filled a page with notes, every line deliberate. By the time she left, the mountain air outside felt sharper, as though the world had tilted slightly back in her favor. That evening, Beverly knocked on her door, her terrier tucked under one arm, and a small flash drive dangling from her other hand. She set it on the table. "In case they try to spin it," Beverly said, her voice low but steady. "Recordings, messages, screenshots. I've been keeping a file. Thought you might need it." Connie sat at the polished oak table in John Westbrook's office. The blinds half tilted so thin stripes of morning light slanted across the papers before her. The room smelled faintly of toner and brewed coffee, with an undertone of leather from the chairs. She steadied her hands, laying them flat on the thick packet of documents that would reshape her life's work into something untouchable. John adjusted his glasses and tapped his pen once against the signature line. "We're transferring your home, retirement accounts, and certificates of deposit into the trust. From this moment forward, they're no longer in your name alone. They belong to the trust, and the trust belongs to the terms you set." Connie glanced at the stack of deeds and account summaries neatly clipped to the side. The house she'd lived in for 40 years. The savings she'd built book by book, paycheck by paycheck. Never extravagant, but steady. Even the old certificates she and her husband had purchased back when Chloe was just a toddler. All of it was sliding into a new kind of ownership, one her daughter and son-in-law couldn't touch. John's tone sharpened as he explained the next section. We're including airtight no contest clauses. If Heather or Evan challenge any part of this, the court will see the documented record of their behavior. The bus incident, the account access attempt. That evidence will be attached to this trust. Their challenge would only prove your point. Connie gave a short nod. Her throat felt tight, but her grip on the pen didn't falter. And Chloe, named as sole beneficiary, John confirmed. She inherits everything when she turns 25. Until then, the trustee manages distributions for education, housing, health. You've designated me as the legal trustee. Beverly as your backup executor. That way Chloe won't face pressure while she's still young. The pen moved steadily across the page as Connie signed. Her loops clean and practiced. Each signature felt less like surrender and more like a reclaimed step, as though she were finally steering her own car again after years of letting someone else grip the wheel. When the last page was complete, John stacked the documents neatly. That's it. It's done. They're officially out of the picture. Connie leaned back in her chair, the air leaving her lungs in a slow exhale. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a smaller envelope, her handwriting crisp across the front. For Heather. I wrote the letter, she said softly. Would you attach it to the packet? John accepted it without opening it. Of course. Do you want to read it aloud? Connie shook her head. It's not for me anymore. Inside the envelope, written in her careful script, were the words she'd chosen after sleepless nights. Some doors, once closed, cannot be unlocked. She had left it at that. No explanations, no arguments. Heather had her last word. Back at home, Connie placed her journal on the counter, opened to the day's entry. Signed the trust. House secured. Accounts transferred. Heather removed. She underlined the last phrase twice, the ink digging into the paper. Beverly stopped by in the late afternoon, carrying her terrier under one arm and a casserole under the other. So, she asked, setting the dish down on the counter. It's done, Connie replied. Her voice was quiet but not fragile. They can't undo it. Beverly let out a low whistle, a grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. Well then. Cheers to paper armor. She produced a bottle of sparkling water from her tote, cracked it open, and poured them each a glass. The carbonation fizzed against Connie's tongue, sharp and refreshing. For the first time in weeks, Connie felt the weight in her chest lift, replaced by something solid, unshakable. She had taken herself off their road, and in doing so, had driven them out of her future. Evening settled over the house. Connie moved through the rooms slowly, touching the backs of chairs, the window frame, the cool surface of the refrigerator. Each object now sealed under her protection. The place no longer felt vulnerable. It felt fortified. She was just settling into her armchair with her journal when the crunch of tires on gravel cut across the quiet. Headlights flared through the front window, sweeping across the living room wall. Connie stiffened, closing the journal slowly. The knock rattled Connie's storm door. Too casual, too loud. She opened it slowly, and there it was, the Audi sitting in her driveway like a glossy black sculpture. Its headlights dimmed, leaving behind a faint warmth in the air that smelled of exhaust and new leather. Evan leaned against the hood, grinning wide enough to show every tooth. Heather hovered nearby, her smile stretched and brittle, the kind she used for holiday cards. Chloe lingered at the back, half in shadow, her posture hesitant. Connie, Evan called, voice booming like he owned the block. We thought you might want to ride to the store. Break this baby, and Heather chimed in, her tone lilting. It's so smooth, Mom. You won't believe how quiet it drives. Connie stepped onto the porch, her cardigan buttoned neat, one hand resting on the rail. She studied the car, then their faces, her expression unreadable. The cool night breeze lifted the faint lavender scent from her sleeve, and she held it like a shield. No thanks, she said evenly. I've already been. For a heartbeat, Evan's grin faltered. Then he slapped the hood playfully. Well, the offer's there. Beats riding that old bus, right? Heather's smile wavered but recovered. We just thought you'd want to be part of it. New car, new chapter. Connie's lips curved in the faintest smile, one without warmth. I've got my own chapters. She let the words hang, then gestured toward the door. You could come in for tea if you'd like. The invitation hung like bait. Heather looked at Evan, then shook her head lightly. We don't really have time tonight. Busy week, Evan echoed. You know how it is. Only Chloe moved closer. She wrapped her arms around Connie without a word, the hug longer, firmer than usual. Connie smoothed her granddaughter's hair, breathing in the faint shampoo scent of apples. Drive safe, Connie whispered into her ear. Chloe squeezed tighter, then stepped back reluctantly, her eyes shimmering with something she didn't say. Evan jingled the keys, a showman again. All right, then. Next time, he slid into the driver's seat, the car's interior lights glowing faintly as Heather joined him. The Audi purred alive, headlights sweeping across Connie's living room windows before they rolled down the street. The house seemed to sigh as silence settled back in. Connie shut the door, locking it with deliberate care. She walked to her desk, pulled out stationery, and began a second letter, not for Heather, not for Evan, but for Chloe. Her pen moved slowly, the words softer, almost tender. You see more than you say. One day, you'll learn the difference between those who use love as leverage and those who give it freely. I hope you'll remember I gave it freely. She folded the letter carefully, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it into her drawer alongside the documents John had drawn up. Across the front, she wrote in her steady hand, for Chloe, private. The rest of the night passed in small sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of a settling floorboard, the faint hiss of sprinklers outside. Connie made tea for herself, the steam carrying the faint earthy scent of chamomile, and sat with her journal. Her phone buzzed sharply against the counter. She glanced down, expecting perhaps a text from Chloe. Instead, the notification banner read, Bank alert, attempted login blocked. Joint account ending in 2143. Connie's pulse kicked. That account, an old one, opened years ago when Heather and Evan had convinced her it would simplify bills, had sat untouched ever since. She had nearly forgotten it existed. She tapped the alert, the words glaring up at her. Multiple failed password entries. Unauthorized access attempt. Account locked for security. The tea cooled in her hand, untouched. She set the mug down slowly, her mind tightening around one fact with unshakable clarity. Evan hadn't just brought his car to her doorstep tonight. He had tried to drive straight through her defenses. Connie stared at the glowing alert on her phone until the letters blurred. Unauthorized login. Multiple attempts. Security hold. Her chest felt hollow, the quiet of her kitchen pressing in around her. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, sharp and insistent, as if echoing her own alarm. She carried the phone to her desk, sat down, and pulled the drawer open. Out came her yellow pad, the one already filled with columns of notes about wills and trusts. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote in capital letters, 2143 account, close immediately. Morning light slanted across her table when she stepped into the branch the next day. The air smelled faintly of printer ink and stale coffee. A young teller glanced at her ID, then typed rapidly at the terminal. This account's been locked, Mrs. Elkins, the teller said gently. Multiple failed login attempts. It looks like someone was trying to access it with your birth date. Connie's spine stiffened. My birth date. The teller nodded. Yes, ma'am. Fortunately, the system froze the account automatically. Nothing was withdrawn. Connie pursed her lips, the muscles in her jaw tight. She signed the paperwork with neat, deliberate strokes, authorizing the account's permanent closure. When the teller slid the final slip toward her, she pressed down hard enough that the pen left a faint indentation in the wood beneath the carbon sheet. Later, back in John Westbrook's office, The smell of brewed coffee and leather grounded her again. John read the bank notice twice before setting it flat on his desk. His tone was clipped. This is attempted unauthorized access. I'll file an affidavit documenting the event. It adds to your protective record. Another line of evidence showing why your trust excludes them. Connie folded her hands neatly in her lap. Do it. John's pen scratched swiftly across a legal form, his movements efficient. You've done well, Connie. You didn't panic. You acted. That's what makes this airtight. She inclined her head once. They think they know me. They don't? That evening, as the sun dipped low over the rooftops, Chloe arrived with her backpack slung loosely over one shoulder. She lingered in the doorway, hesitating before she spoke. Grandma, Dad was bragging at dinner. He said he still remembered your PIN from years ago. He laughed about it. Connie looked at her granddaughter with calm eyes, though her pulse thudded at her temples. He doesn't know me at all, she said evenly. Chloe's brow furrowed. I just wanted you to know. So you can be careful. Connie reached across the table, took Chloe's hand, and squeezed gently. Thank you for telling me. They sat together in silence for a moment, the smell of Chloe's apple shampoo still clinging faintly from her hair, the evening air carrying the sound of sprinklers hissing in the yards outside. After Chloe left, Connie returned to her desk. She pulled out her journal, underlined the words 2143 account closed twice, then closed the book with a satisfying thud. The house was quiet again, almost too quiet. She poured herself a glass of water, the clink of ice sharp against the rim, and sank into her chair. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She leaned over and checked the screen. An email from Heather. We're concerned about your independence. Let's talk options. Connie stared at the subject line, the corners of her mouth tightening into something between a grimace and a smile. Independence, she thought. That was exactly what they were losing. The next day, her phone rang. Heather's voice came across the line, careful and sweetened. Mom, I worry. Maybe it's time to think about transitioning to a retirement plan before it becomes urgent. Connie sat at her kitchen table, the smell of brewed coffee curling up from her cup. She looked out the window at the garden she still tended herself, petunias blooming, soil freshly turned. I'm managing fine, Heather, she replied evenly. Heather pressed on. But these things sneak up on people. You don't want to wait until it's too late. Some of those communities are so lovely. Independent living, activities, people your age. Connie stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking against porcelain. Her lips curved faintly. I've got plenty of activities, thank you. A pause. Then Evan's voice joined, clearly on speaker. Connie, what about the house? We could help manage a sale if you're ready to downsize. The market's strong. You'd get top dollar. Connie let a small silence fill the line. She looked around her dining room. Polished oak table, shelves she'd dusted just yesterday, sunlight warming the floorboards. The house, she said, is already managed. There was a rustle of irritation through the speaker. Heather coughed softly, then said, We're only trying to help. I know, Connie replied, calm and clipped. But I don't need the help you're offering. After she hung up, she dialed Beverly. Within the hour, Beverly appeared on her porch with her terrier and a shopping bag filled with hardware. They spent the afternoon replacing locks and mounting 2 new outdoor cameras, one above the garage, one by the back door. The scent of fresh metal and oil lingered in the warm air as Beverly tightened the last screw. If they're circling, we make sure you see them coming, she muttered. That night, Connie forwarded the email thread to John Westbrook. His reply came before morning. Added to your file, reinforces intent, stay documented. Connie felt a flicker of satisfaction. Every step her daughter took to frame her as declining became another nail sealing the trust. A few days later, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Chloe. Grandma, I don't know if I should show you this, but Mom's been saying things in the family group chat. Connie's fingers hesitated before opening the forwarded screenshot. There it was in black and white, Heather's words. She's slipping, forgetting things. We need to consider alternatives before it gets worse. Connie's jaw tightened. She set the phone down, her hand trembling only slightly before she steadied it, on the table. Forgetting things. The accusation was as deliberate as the earlier insult about smell, just dressed in softer language. That evening, Connie wrote another journal entry, her pen sharp and decisive. Today, Heather declared me declining. I replied by pruning the roses without gloves. No slip, no forget. The garden clippings still smelled of fresh green and soil on her hands when the phone rang again. Long after sunset, Connie reached for it, the unfamiliar number lighting the screen. Mrs. Elkins, a woman's voice asked, polite but brisk. This is Maplewood Senior Living. We received your name as an interested party. I'm calling to schedule a tour. Connie froze, the air in her kitchen thick as clay. Interested party, she repeated slowly. Yes, ma'am. Your daughter Heather listed you last week. Said you might be ready for information. Connie's grip on the phone tightened, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. The tea kettle whistled faintly on the stove behind her, but she didn't move. So that was their next option. Paperwork, enrollment forms, quiet signatures meant to box her in. Her lips pressed into a thin line. We'll need to talk about that, she said coldly, though her voice never rose. Connie sat at her kitchen table, the phone pressed to her ear, as the woman from Maplewood Senior Living explained. Yes, ma'am, your daughter Heather submitted the interest packet. It included your date of birth, your home address, even some basic health notes. We normally wouldn't question it, but... But what? Connie asked, her voice tight. The woman hesitated, papers rustling faintly in the background. We did a standard capacity cross-check. Your recent trust filing came up in the system. When someone establishes an irrevocable trust, we usually don't expect to see a concurrent care inquiry unless the individual initiates it. It raised a red flag, Connie's free hand curled against the table edge. So you flagged it? Yes, ma'am. We thought it best to confirm directly with you before scheduling anything. Connie inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Consider this my confirmation. I am of full capacity, and I decline your services, she hung up, the finality of the click echoing through the quiet house. The smell of her cooling coffee filled the air, bitter and grounding. She reached for her leather journal and wrote in clean, measured script. Heather filed my name for care. Unauthorized. Declined. By mid-morning, she was in John Westbrook's office, the folder of emails and phone notes stacked neatly on his desk. John read through the Maplewood documentation, with a frown tugging at the corner of his mouth. They've overstepped, he said flatly. Filing false care interest forms with your personal information. That isn't just meddling, that's attempted control. Connie sat straighter in her chair. So what do we do? John flipped open a legal pad. We file a protective record with Elder Services. It establishes that you are of full capacity, you've secured your estate, and any attempts to place you without consent are suspect. It'll go in the system. If they try again, it will trigger a review. Connie nodded once. Do it. The room smelled faintly of ink and leather as John drafted the statement. His pen moved with crisp authority, the words forming a barrier more solid than locks or cameras. When he finished, he slid the document across for her signature. Connie read it carefully, then pressed her pen to paper with deliberate precision. That evening, Chloe arrived after school, shoulders hunched, eyes shadowed. She dropped her backpack on the floor with a heavy thud and collapsed into a chair. They talk about your money more than your health, she blurted, her voice breaking. I hear them at night, arguing, whispering. Dad says it's not fair you keep it all locked up. Mom says you'll slip eventually, and then it'll be theirs. Connie's chest ached at the rawness in her granddaughter's face. She reached across the table, pulling Chloe into her arms. Chloe trembled against her, smelling faintly of apple shampoo and cafeteria pizza. You are not them, Connie whispered into her hair. You are not them. Chloe clung tighter, her tears dampening Connie's cardigan. For a long moment, they stayed like that, two people holding each other against the storm circling outside. Later, after Chloe had gone home, Connie returned to her desk. The house creaked in the cooling night, the refrigerator hummed, and the faint lavender sachet in her drawer perfumed the air. She straightened her papers, sliding Maplewood's brochure into a file marked Attempts. The doorbell didn't ring that night, but her email did. A notification blinked across the screen. Subject line bold. Notice of intent. Connie clicked it open. The letterhead was professional, the language cold. Mrs. Elkins, it read. We intend to challenge your estate distribution on the grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. Expect formal filings to follow. The signature at the bottom made her jaw tighten. Evan Lott. The letter with Evan's signature still sat on Connie's desk when she met John at his office the next morning. He read it once, lips tightening into a thin line, then dropped it flat against the polished surface. They don't realize, John said, tapping the page with his pen, that you don't have a will anymore. You have a trust, and it's sealed, witnessed, capacity verified. They're swinging at the wrong document. Connie folded her hands neatly in her lap. Then send them the outline. He did. Within hours, Heather and Evan received a packet by certified mail, the trust framework stamped with the notary seal, accompanied by an affidavit confirming Connie's mental capacity at the time of signing. The packet included dates, witness signatures, and every protective clause John had layered into the foundation. Paper armor, stronger than concrete. That evening, Connie's phone rang. Heather's number flashed on the screen. Connie answered, her tone measured. Mom? Heather's voice was high, cracking. How could you? You're punishing us for one mistake. One slip of the tongue. Connie stared at her garden through the window, the roses swaying gently in the twilight breeze. Her voice was calm, steady as a librarian shelving books. You made it more than once. On the other end, Heather's sobs came quick, messy, almost theatrical. You're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this when you're... Connie ended the call before the sentence finished. The silence afterward was cleaner, sharper. She reached for her journal and underlined today's entry twice. The next morning, an envelope arrived in her mailbox. No return address, just Chloe's looping handwriting. Inside was a single drawing, two birds flying in opposite directions, one carrying a branch, the other empty-clawed. Beneath it, Chloe had written, I think you're the one with the branch. Connie pressed the paper to her chest, the faint smell of pencil graphite still clinging to it. Her eyes pricked, but she didn't cry. Instead, she slipped the drawing into the same folder where she kept the trust documents, giving it a place of honor. By afternoon, she was back at John's office, her voice cool but firm. They'll try again. Maybe not through lawyers. Maybe through guilt. John gave a curt nod. Then we'll add language. Emotional manipulation shall void contact. He drafted the clause on the spot, his pen scratching across the paper. Connie signed it, her script steady. She left the office with another layer of protection, another stone in the wall she was building. That evening, Beverly stopped by with her terrier in tow and a bag of groceries dangling from her wrist. She spotted the new clause tucked into Connie's folder and whistled low. Paper armor, she said with a grin. Stronger than any lock I can put on your doors. Connie allowed herself the smallest smile. Exactly. They ate together at the table, the dog curled at their feet, the faint smell of roasted chicken filling the kitchen. For the first time in weeks, Connie felt something close to peace, but peace never lasted long. As Beverly gathered her things to leave, Connie's phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Grandma, can I come stay with you this summer, just for a while? Connie read it twice, her heart thudding against her ribs. She looked at the empty guest room down the hall, its bed made, its quilt folded neat. The house had always been waiting for someone. The guest room had sat waiting for years, its quilt folded tight at the foot of the bed, its dresser drawers empty, smelling faintly of cedar. Connie moved slowly through the space, smoothing the sheets, setting a lamp on the nightstand, and placing a vase of fresh petunias from the garden on the sill. For the first time in months, the room didn't feel idle, it felt expectant. Chloe arrived with one suitcase and her sketchbook tucked under her arm. No dramatic announcement, no slamming of doors, just quiet footsteps, a quick glance over her shoulder as though afraid her parents might follow. Connie met her at the threshold, opened the door wide, and simply said, "This is yours for as long as you want it." The first week unfolded gently, like a rhythm rediscovered. They cooked simple meals together, pasta with fresh basil from the garden, omelets folded golden and steaming, cornbread baked until the crust crackled. The kitchen filled with scents that felt more like family than anything Heather and Evan could manufacture. In the evenings, they sat on the porch swing with library books open, the sun dipping behind the mountains, cicadas buzzing low in the grass. Connie read her mystery novel in measured pace. Chloe sketched in silence, pencil scratching as the porch light glowed over their shoulders. No lectures, no guilt, just presence. Beverly joined them often, her terrier curled in Chloe's lap as she flipped through Connie's folders. One afternoon, she spread papers across the table and showed Chloe how to notarize a signature. "Stamp here, initials here," Beverly said, her voice brisk but kind. Chloe leaned close, the ink's sharp scent filling her nose. "Why do I need to know this?" Chloe asked. "Because," Beverly replied, tapping the stamp with authority. "People will try to say things don't count if they don't look official. Knowing how to make it official? That's power." Connie watched the exchange with quiet satisfaction. Chloe wasn't just witnessing this summer, she was learning how to armor herself. By July, Connie met with John again to amend the trust. She slid the updated clause across his desk. An expanded education fund, earmarked solely for Chloe's tuition and living expenses. John reviewed it, nodding once. "Smart. This makes it ironclad. College, grad school, whatever she chooses. No one else can claim it." Connie signed the amendment with her usual steady hand. When Chloe asked why later that night, Connie only smiled softly and said, "Because investments grow best when planted in good soil." But warmth didn't come without cold winds. Heather's voice arrived in the form of a voicemail one humid evening, her words brittle with rage. "She's stealing our daughter now. First the money, now Chloe. Don't think I don't see what you're doing." Connie listened once, then pressed the archive button. The message disappeared into a digital vault, never to be answered. The house stayed calm, filled with the scent of lavender soap and the faint hum of the fan in Chloe's room. The summer stretched on, sunlight glinting off watering cans in the garden. The sound of Chloe's laughter threading through the house. Connie found herself stronger for it, her steps steadier, her nights less restless. Each day with Chloe was a reminder that she wasn't living in retreat. She was living in choice. Near the end of July, the phone rang. Again. This time, it wasn't Heather. It was the county courthouse clerk. "Mrs. Elkins," the voice said, professional but kind. "I'm calling to confirm your filing. The trust has been certified and marked irreversible. Everything is now permanent in the records." Connie set the receiver down gently, her heart steady. In the guest room down the hall, Chloe's laughter rose again, warm and bright as sunlight through winter frost. The courthouse smelled faintly of waxed floors and recycled air, the kind of sterile stillness that made every sound carry. Connie sat beside John Westbrook in a narrow hallway lined with manila folders and muted chatter. The clerk at the counter took the final packet of documents, her trust, and stamped it with a heavy seal. The thud echoed through the space, like a gavel. John slid the certified copy back across the counter to Connie. "That's it. Irrevocable certification filed with the county. No amendments, no reversals. No one can touch this." Now Connie held the packet, its weight oddly reassuring. She thought of Heather's emails, Evan's boasts, the bus ride that had started it all. This paper wasn't just ink and signature. It was armor that couldn't be peeled away. Back at home, the late afternoon light slanted across her desk as Connie pulled a fresh stack of stationery from the drawer. She smoothed the first sheet flat and began to draft her final letter to Heather and Evan. You asked if this was punishment. It is not. It is protection. Some doors, once closed, cannot be unlocked. You closed them yourselves with words you thought would vanish. I kept them. I remember everything. Her hand didn't shake as she wrote, each word pressed deep into the fibers of the page. That evening, Beverly arrived with her terrier tugging at the leash and reading glasses perched low on her nose. Connie slid the letter across the table. Beverly read silently, lips moving faintly, then looked up. No room for misreading, she said. That's how it should be. Connie exhaled, then reached for the envelope. There's more. She clipped a final page to the back of the letter, receipts from the bank closure, dates of Heather's facility inquiry, Evan's attempt at the joint account, the exact words that had started it all. Not with that smell in the car. Underlined, preserved. The terrier barked once, sharp, as if punctuating the moment. Later that night, Chloe sat at the desk beside her grandmother. Connie turned the packet toward her. This is the last witness line. You don't have to. I want to, Chloe said firmly, reaching for the pen. She signed her name in neat strokes, then added quietly, I saw it all. The room smelled of lavender and printer ink. Connie folded the letter into its envelope, slid it into the trust binder, and clicked the latch shut. It was done. Not just locked, but shielded permanently. For the first time, Connie allowed herself a long, steady breath. The walls of the house seemed to ease, no longer trembling under threat. She poured herself tea, steam curling in the lamplight, and settled into her armchair with her journal. She wrote a single line. They cannot reach me now. The piece lasted less than an hour. Her phone buzzed against the side table, screen lighting the dim room. A text from Heather. We didn't mean it like that. Connie stared at the words, her tea cooling in her hands. The phrase pulsed on the screen like a flare in the dark. Too late, too hollow, too careful. She closed her eyes, the memory of their laughter still sharp, still intact. Connie set the phone on the counter, poured the cold tea down the sink, and wiped her hands dry on a towel. When she returned, she picked up the phone, read the message one more time, and pressed delete. The screen went blank. The silence after the deletion was oddly satisfying, like shutting a heavy book after the final chapter. For the first time in months, Connie didn't feel compelled to save their words. She had preserved what mattered. This, apologies crafted too late, too hollow, wasn't worth ink. Instead, she pulled open her drawer and retrieved Chloe's poem. The paper was folded in half, the pencil lines faintly smudged. She unfolded it carefully, running her fingertips over the words. You never smelled like anything but safety. Her throat tightened. She pressed the page flat against the desk, and for a long moment, she simply sat in the lamplight, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft night wind rattling the trees outside. Meaning wasn't what they said about her. It was what Chloe saw in her. The next morning, a letter slid into Heather and Evan's mailbox by certified mail. John Westbrook had handled the details, but Connie knew exactly what it contained. The official exclusion notice. It was stamped, sealed, and verified. An announcement to her daughter and son-in-law that they had been cut from her estate entirely. No contest clause. No loopholes. While that envelope traveled across town, Connie and Chloe knelt by the mailbox outside the Elkins home. The soil was warm and fragrant in their hands as they pressed in new lavender seedlings. The scent rose immediately, sharp and calming, filling the summer air. Chloe wiped her dirt-streaked hands on her jeans and glanced at her grandmother. It'll grow fast, won't it? It will, Connie said, patting the soil gently. Lavender's stubborn. Like us, the two shared a quick smile, sunlight spilling across them. Later that week, Beverly arrived in her denim jacket, terrier tugging eagerly at the leash. She perched on the porch swing, watching Connie file away more paperwork. "Well," Beverly said, her voice carrying amusement, "not one of us broke a sweat through this whole thing." "Just paper cuts," Connie chuckled softly, closing the folder with a satisfying snap. "Let them heal however they want." It wasn't anger anymore, not even grief. It was resolve, sharpened and set. She had turned the insult, the dismissal, the attempted control into something permanent, something they couldn't unravel. That evening, Chloe brewed chamomile tea in the kitchen, the scent drifting through the house. Connie sat at her desk, her journal open, and wrote a new entry. "They meant it as a joke. I meant it as truth. They said I smelled bad. Chloe said I smelled like safety. I believe her." She closed the book and looked toward the window, where the lavender seedlings tilted in the breeze. For the first time in months, her chest felt light, her shoulders unburdened. The following morning, the mailbox rattled with new mail. Bills, a grocery flyer, a glossy postcard advertising a new yoga studio downtown, and one envelope with no return address. Connie slid it open at the counter. Inside was a single photograph. Heather and Evan stood stiffly in front of the Audi, their smiles absent, their posture rigid. Evan's hand rested on the hood, but instead of pride, his expression was sour. Heather's eyes looked swollen, as though from tears. Connie turned the photo over, blank back, no note. Just the image, two people who had spent so much effort trying to shine, captured in a moment where even the shine had left them. She placed the photo on the table and stared at it, the lavender breeze wafting faintly through the open kitchen window. The photograph lay on Connie's counter for a full day, its glossy surface catching light whenever she passed. Evan's scowl, Heather's swollen eyes, the Audi gleaming behind them like a trophy they could no longer enjoy. Eventually, Connie slid the photo into a drawer beneath the phone directories and shut it softly. No frame, no reply, no acknowledgement. Silence was its own answer. Life inside her house moved forward. On a Wednesday afternoon, Chloe burst through the door, her backpack swinging wildly, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandma, you have to read this!" She waved a letter thick with embossed lettering. Connie adjusted her glasses and unfolded it carefully. "Congratulations. Full academic scholarship awarded." The words blurred as her eyes filled, but Chloe's grin anchored her. "A full ride," Connie whispered, her throat tight. She reached out, cupped Chloe's face with both hands, and kissed her forehead. "You did this. Not them. You?" The kitchen filled with Chloe's laughter, bright as wind chimes, the sound washing out the stale echo of old insults. That night, Connie sat at her desk with her trust documents spread across the blotter. The lavender outside the window scented the cool air. She drafted an amendment in John Westbrook's precise legal language. Upon her passing, a portion of her estate would be donated to a county literacy fund. She added one final twist. The donation would be made in Heather Lott's name. When John read it, his brows rose. "Are you sure?" Connie smiled faintly. She wanted elevation. She'll have it. Just not the kind she imagined Beverly stopped by later. Grocery bag dangling from one hand, terrier trotting at her heels. Connie poured her iced tea as Beverly skimmed the amendment. "That's closure," Beverly said, smirking as she set the page back on the counter. "She'll never know whether to feel flattered or mocked." Connie shrugged, her lips curving. "That part's not mine to carry." The following weekend, Connie slid behind the wheel of her old '99 sedan. Chloe climbed into the passenger seat, her hair still damp from a morning shower, the scent of her shampoo mingling with the faint whiff of old upholstery. The engine rumbled to life, stubborn but steady. They drove past the Audi dealership on College Avenue. Gleaming rows of cars stretched like soldiers under the Colorado sun, banners snapping in the breeze. Connie didn't slow down, didn't glance toward the showroom glass. Chloe didn't either. No words passed between them, but the silence brimmed with understanding. Some roads weren't meant to be shared. That night, Connie opened her journal. Her pen glided across the page with calm finality. It was never about the car. It was about being seen. She underlined it once, then set the pen aside. The next morning, the county clerk's website updated. Connie didn't check it herself, but Beverly called before noon, her voice sharp with amusement. "Connie, it's posted. Public record. Trust summary, final, and searchable. Anyone can look it up." Anyone. Connie sat back in her chair, the phone warm against her ear. "Then let them look." Outside, the lavender swayed in the wind, stubborn and fragrant, marking the boundary between what had been taken from her and what she had reclaimed. The windows were open, letting in the crisp Fort Collins air. It carried the faint scent of pine from the foothills and the sweeter trace of lavender from the garden beds by the mailbox. Connie sat at her desk, posture straight, pen resting in her hand though the writing was done. In the kitchen, Chloe moved quietly, the whistle of the kettle rising as she set mugs on the counter. The clink of porcelain, the rustle of tea bags. It was the soundtrack of a home that hummed with steadiness instead of strain. On Connie's desk sat the binder. Thick, heavy, its cover a dull navy blue, the spine labeled in her neat handwriting, "For Chloe only." She ran her fingertips over it, feeling the ridges of the embossed letters, the permanence of the choices sealed inside. Full, final, executed. She had checked each tab again this morning. The trust documents, the amendment for Chloe's education, the posthumous donation, the signed letters. Every page bore dates, witnesses, receipts. Every page told a story Heather and Evan could never rewrite. Above the desk, on the wall, hung a small wooden frame. Inside it was her original bus pass, edges creased, laminate peeling slightly with age. Beside it, a handwritten note she had clipped from her journal and pressed onto cream cardstock. Smelled bad. Sat tall. Her eyes lingered on it, remembering the sting of that day. Remembering, too, how it had hardened into the fuel she needed. They had thought the insult would vanish into air. She had turned it into stone. Outside the window, the bird feeders swayed. A pair of finches fluttered down, wings beating the air in delicate bursts. They pecked at the seeds, their heads bobbing in unison. The simple rhythm of their presence was almost meditative. Chloe padded into the room, tea in hand. The chamomile curled upward in gentle steam, carrying its grassy, sweet scent. She set the mug beside her grandmother. "Can I drive you somewhere tomorrow?" she asked softly. Connie looked up, her lips curving. "No rush," she said. "I've got time now." For a moment, neither spoke. The house was filled only with the sound of birds outside and the low hum of summer insects. Connie reached over, resting her hand on Chloe's. It wasn't about wheels or cars, or even the sharp-edged words that had cut her months ago. It was about choice, about steering her life where she wanted it to go, and not where others tried to force it. Connie lifted her pen, opened her journal one last time, and wrote the closing line in firm script, pressing hard enough to leave an imprint on the page beneath. "My son-in-law and daughter refused to give me a ride in their new car and said I smelled bad, so I drove them out of my will." She underlined it once, capped the pen, and shut the book with a sound that felt final. The birds scattered outside, wings flashing against the sky, and Connie sat taller in her chair, the binder heavy and safe at her side.